Okay, so in this step, back to the valve cover replacement job. So I've got the forward facing one closest to the front valve cover gasket all prepped and ready. So what I've done here is I used this ultra gray silicone gasket maker. This is the best stuff. I just use this for every job that's related to anything oil related, coolant related, anything like that. This is just the best stuff all around gasket maker for anything on a car. It just really works very, very well. So that's what I've used. So I've just basically put just about maybe like an 1/8 of an inch or less smear of silicone gasket maker here in the corners, all 4 corners here, and then I've done just a tiny smear just all around wherever the rest of the gasket is going to touch, and just going to finish up this one section here and this one section here with just a little smear. I mean, it's going to be like a millimeter smear on around the other sides, around the edges a little bit more, like I was saying, about an 1/8 of an inch or less, maybe even a 1/16 of an inch. So so what I already did was I got the valve cover, the old one out, and then there's 3 tube seals that are for right here for the spark plug tube seals. These are the tubes that go into the engine to just basically channel into the spark plugs. So I've already got those installed. I found this very useful for installing them. I'm not going to make a whole, huge video on every single step, but I just hope that, people will just use common sense when they do these types of repairs. And, excuse me. And, so yeah, so use this silicone spray to put those rubber tube seals in. Just look at how the old ones come out, and then just make sure that when you put the new ones in, they look the same. Just be very careful not to damage them because they'll leak. So, and then what you have to do is each intake or valve cover gasket set you're going to have is going to have these new flat washers and black or blue colored rubber. You want to make sure you put these new ones on the 5 bolts. You want to make sure you put those on, and then I just used a pair of diagonal cutters and cut the old ones off doing this, and then I'm left with this. So I did that for all 5 bolts, and so don't let the silicone sit longer than about 20 minutes. It's been about 20 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and I've got the new valve cover gasket in, all the 3 tube seals in, and then I've got all my bolt washers with the rubber O-rings all in place and all ready to go. And then I'm just going to use a kind of a different torque wrench. It's a TPMS torque wrench, but I like it. It works really well. I'm going to use 100 inch-pounds, which will get me to my specification. And the specification is 8.7 foot-pounds, so it's about 8 foot-pounds. And then, so here is my valve cover tightening sequence that we're going to do right now. So once you're prepared and everything's ready to go on, and let me rewind back. I used brake parts cleaner on just a regular shop towel to wipe everything off and make sure there was no residual oil around all of the mating surfaces that is on the top of the cylinder head. And then I just sprayed a little bit on just one of my shop towels, a little bit of brake parts cleaner, and just wiped off the all around the circumference of the gasket, the new gasket that I put in for the valve cover. So I'm going to grab the valve cover now. So here's the new valve cover that I'm going to put on. Here's the new gasket, and these are the 3 tube seals I was talking about for the spark plugs. So that's how it should look when it's all done. They should be in, seated all the way down. Like I said, use the silicone spray. It works really well. You don't need to use a silicone spray for in here, but you want to make sure that you have the little teeth lined up properly. And this little flapper here, make sure that you just do one valve cover at a time so that you can get the orientation right. So once you get the orientation right and you get these little teeth in and everything looks good and it's pushed all the way in and clean all the way around, then you'll be ready to just go ahead and drop it right on top. So another thing that's going to help too is use the heavy duty silicone spray, whatever it is, and just do a little bit. Actually, I'm gonna go in here. I think this will be better here, and then go ahead and get the valve cover kind of lined up pretty much in these spark plug tubes. And once you get it all lined up, you just kind of wiggle it down until they go on evenly. Wow, this is difficult. Okay, so let's give this another shot here. Make sure if you pull the valve cover off to give it another try, that you push it back in again. So these new tube seals are going to be really tight. So make sure all that looks beautiful and straight, and then line up these annoying tube seals for the spark plugs in the rubber boots, and just kind of wiggle it until they go in. You'll see them kind of pierce through, hopefully. Just try to do the best you can to not force it in, because if you damage these, you're going to have to do them again. Cover on, you want to real gently feed these thin metal sleeves, the spark plug tubes, as they're called, through the rubber boot that goes in on the back side of the valve cover. You will have installed new ones prior to putting this on. And what I found helpful was not only using the silicone spray from Walmart, but using just a medium-sized flathead screwdriver and just very, very gently pressing all around the circumference and basically pushing on the valve cover at the same time, kind of starting from the middle and then working on the outside one and the other outside one. So I was kind of getting it a little bit even as I was doing it, and then I just had to keep looking at the other two and then going back and making sure everything was right. So you'll see the metal ring contrast with the rubber boot around it. So as long as you see the metal ring spark plug tube that protrudes out through the rubber, then you know you've got it. So so now that I've got it all on, I put the bolts in already, and if you forget how the bolts go in, there's going to be shorter parts of the valve cover gasket, and there's going to be deeper parts where you'll see a longer bolt can go in, and then it'll be pretty much self-explanatory. And then what I found really helpful was to use a nut driver with a 10 millimeter. You could use a shorter or a deep socket on there, and I found that very helpful for tightening everything. Your socket on it to get at these 10 millimeter headed bolts in the valve cover. So you'll just kind of start from the middle and do these other two down here, and then you'll do the outside ones. And we're just doing this to seat the valve cover down onto the top of the cylinder head. So basically you're just gonna do this until you feel that it's as tight as you can go with your hand. Okay, so just going back here. So in service, this is called like making one pass. So a lot of times you're going to be doing 2 or 3 passes, meaning you're going to go through all the bolts kind of in the sequence, and you're going to go through them again, and then you're going to go through them again. So if we did it 3 times, it'd be 3 passes, and then the final torque is going to be 100 inch-pounds or 8.7 foot-pounds. So I feel like I'm at that point now, so I'm going to go and find my torque wrench. So this is the one I'm going to use here. All right, so I got it all set up. And the sequence is the top one here is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So best to have that out. This is pretty easy. I don't need to have a sequence tightening diagram. I just for, to show people how to do it. But it's always a good idea to do it. If you're prepared, the job goes easy and you'll be happier doing it, and you'll just, have the satisfaction that you did it right with the diagram. So it's really good to just be prepared and have all those things ready as you're doing the repair. So it looks like I'm going to probably be doing another pass here, meaning I'm going to hit all the bolts again, and then I'm going to start again. You don't want to just get it all the way as tight as you can, all the way to your spec right off the bat. You want to give it a chance to all seat in properly. So I'm about there now. And then you could go again, just to be sure they're all good. And then once I've reached my torque specification, what I like to do is I like to start from the far left and go clockwise. Until I reach the last one again. So then I know that all 5 bolts are all good and tight, all evenly, all at the spec, all good to go. So this one is done. And so basically you're just going to just do the exact same thing that I did on this, on the back cover. It's just a little bit harder to get to, but take your time, you'll get it. Use a mirror, an inspection mirror if you have to, for those spark plug tubes, to make sure that they pass through the little rubber seals okay, and do the silicone like I showed you, because you don't want to have to go back and do this job again. You probably don't have to use any silicone, but I'm not using too much, and I know that this has been very successful for me in the past. I've never had anything come back leaking on me ever doing it this way. Just don't use too much silicone. So just use your best judgment, be smart, and just use common sense, and you'll get the job done. So once you get the other valve cover on, then you'll be good to go to get ready to put the plenum back on. So I'll add more to this here shortly. I'm putting on the upper plenum now, and I've already done the front and rear valve cover job. So all that's all done. All the coils are back in. Make sure that you take off this metal gasket and clean it and clean underneath. And just be careful not to drop anything into these 6 holes here, because they go right into the engine. Make sure you have all your fuel injectors plugged back in. Make sure everything looks right. And if you were taking a picture or whatever, look at your phone and go in the gallery and look at the pictures and see what's going on here. Just to make sure it's all right. There's I believe an Egr Passage Hole here that looks like about a 1/2 inch diameter. If it's plugged up, now's the time to clean it. And then on the plenum, this hole right here is the one that goes right into the to the lower intake manifold. So I cleaned this one out, and that one I shined a flashlight in it, and it looked good. So we're all good now. And then I've cleaned this off here with a rag. So I'm gonna get ready to drop it on now, slowly and carefully. Just make sure nothing's going to fall into the engine as you're putting this on, so you just put it up just like this. There's 2 studs sticking out here, and so you'll just line them up, and then this is the way that goes to the throttle body, so it goes this way. anything that's obstructing it from coming down, move it out of the way. And should be seating perfectly right on top where it needs to be. And you'll see the studs that are stuck out about that far. And then you'll go ahead and you'll thread everything in. So you'll get all your main bolts here started. Rather just put in like this. And you just let them fall in. So then you can just take a nut driver, 1/4-inch drive, and you can put a 12mm socket on it. And once you have the plenum on and everything, and you're sure nothing's obstructing it from going down and being tightened, and then you just start all of them basically by hand to make sure that you don't cross thread anything. It's because these bolt threads are going into aluminum, so you want to make sure you start it all by hand, and then just turn them all till they're all tight. And then you're gonna need to probably do 2 passes on it. So pass is just going through the sequence, and then that's 1 pass, and going through the sequence again is 2 passes. So probably 2 or 3 passes. Once you have everything snug down, then you're going to use your torque wrench. So you could do 200 inch-pounds, or you can do 16 foot-pounds. So the top plenum, the intake plenum torque sequence is here, as in the picture. And then the torque specification is 16 foot-pounds or 200 inch-pounds. And so, so what you'll do is you'll get your torque wrench set up, and you'll follow the sequence. So you'll do your passes. You'll do 2, 3 passes, just doing a little bit at a time until you feel like they're starting to get tight. Then you'll go through the sequence of torquing everything, and then you'll go. I always like to go into a circle clockwise to make sure I hit all the bolts. It's a redundant step, but it makes me feel better. I know that I've done the job right, and that later on I won't have any questions as to if I did it right or not, or did I get all the bolts or not. And then, so after that's done, you'll put on the top plenum cover that says Honda on it, and just make sure when you torque these little silver bolts that you don't over torque them. The spec is 8 foot-pounds or 100 inch-pounds. So you can do 90 inch-pounds, or you could do 7 foot-pounds. If you don't feel comfortable going so high, then just go a little bit lower. It's not a problem. You just want to be somewhere in the ballpark of 8 foot-pounds or 100 inch-pounds. So it depends on what torque wrench you have. And then just do the sequence and torque them all down, and then go around in a circle, make sure they're all done once you've torqued them all, and then you should be good to go.